Hi, this is Beverly, and I'm going to be talking to you today about digital audio workstations. What is a DAW? Digital audio workstations have been used by recording artists since 1989 as a substitute for sequencers, multi-track tape players, recording effects, and hardware synthesizers. Look back 50 years, and recording studios were typically huge venues with tens of thousands of dollars of equipment and a network of cables. It might cost a couple $100s an hour to use such a studio too. Now, a good DAW system can basically replace all of that equipment for a fraction of the price. That notable price drop had a huge impact on the music industry. It was, in essence, the democratization of music production. People with far less income could now record music at home. So digital audio workstations meant that the geography limitations of traditional recording studios, where you needed to travel to one or be located near one in order to use one, that time was over. It also meant that artists from different parts of the world could more easily record together. Furthermore, digital audio workstations freed artists from the tyranny of the hourly charge for recording studio time. This meant that they had more time to play. Once they own the software, they can play with it as much as they want. They could rush themselves through a project or take their time. They could also feel more able to scrap projects that weren't working out because they weren't paying by the hour for studio time. There are many different kinds of digital audio workstations. The first to come out in 1989 was Cubase for the Atari ST computer, and it was originally just a MIDI sequencer. Next out was Pro Tools in 1991. It started out as really a substitution for a recording studio, and in fact, major recording studios all made the transition from analog tape to digital using Pro Tools as a substitute for a multi-track tape machine like an Atari. It was a Mac program only for a very long time. Next out was Logic. It started off just as a sequencer where you'd plug in outboard MIDI gear. It originally came out for the Atari ST and the Mac in 1993. Then was Ableton. It started off as a loop-based nonlinear audio sequencer, meaning everything was a collection of adjustable clips. And there was no MIDI, just audio. Now there's MIDI too, of course. Ableton first came out in 1999. Last was Reason in 2000, and that started off as a collection of software synthesizers, like a virtual synth rack with a sequencer. We're here with Scott Kremen in his home studio. Scott was a student at Berklee College of Music and has had recording contracts and been on tour, and he now records primarily at his home studio. He uses a variety of DAWs to record, including Reason, Logic, and Pro Tools, and now he's going to show us using Reason how he uses a sequencer.
Hi. Okay, so what I've done is I already laid down a drum track that you can hear right over here. So right here, this is the drum track. If you zoom in, you can see all the notes. And I'll play it back just to make sure that it's working. Sounds good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to record a synth bass track. So first, let's see that it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record that into the sequencer in this lane over here. And then once that's done, I'm going to edit the sound. All right, now next what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in to the synthesizer that I'm using over here. It's called Predator, and I'm going to just muck with the sound a little bit, and I'm going to record that in. Now that's something that you can do with Reason. It'll record every knob turn that you do. So we're going to record it again. Here's the filter. Hear how the sound changes?
Yeah. Definitely. So you're turning the knob on the filter, turning it up and down to affect the sound.
That's right.
The quality of the sound.
And then right over here, I'll even change. Right there, see, I changed the wave, and you can see in Reason, whenever a change is made, a little green light appears.
Oh, okay.
So that way you know what you're doing.
So
Scott, you showed us the sequencer, which is one important part of a DAW system. Can you show us now how the effects work in DAWs?
Sure. So the effects in a DAW work exactly like they would if you were in a real recording studio. There are two kinds of effects. There are inserts, where you can insert an effect directly on, or you can have an effect work across all the different instruments, and that's the kind of effects that I'm going to be adding right now. And so we'll go to the mixer. Now this mixer is just like a normal mixer that you'd see in a studio. That's a hardware mixer, kind of like the one that I have over here, but here it's a little bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some reverb to the track that I just made. So I'm going to hit play in the sequencer, and then I'm going to go over to the mixer. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to turn on the send one. That's our reverb. I'm going to turn it on. And see how it sounds different? I've just added reverb. Now I'm going to stop that, and I might want to say, oh, well, doesn't work. I'm going to add some echo. So I'll turn on that one, and I'll hit play again. Now listen to this, see?
So certainly while 50 years ago, musicians could switch easily between reverb and echo, the issue was one of cost. The really high quality reverb such as an EMT might cost $10,000. The average musician couldn't afford to use that. But now, they can buy an emulator for their DAW and get the same effect that they could with the original EMT.
Still, another impact of digital audio workstations is that they allow musicians to play a wider range of instruments and have them available to them immediately. They can access them all through their keyboard. Another impact of DAW is that you're recording at a higher rate. Analog tape has a maximum bit rate of 16 bits at 48 kilohertz, but using a DAW you can record audio at 24-bit, 120 kilohertz. That doesn't mean it's going to make your music better, but it'll definitely color your sound.
When you record something on a DAW at the highest possible bit rate, you are going to hear exactly what the artist put down. I mean, in this case, me.
So which DAW do you prefer recording in, and tell us a bit about why?
Well, I use Reason, Logic, and Ableton Live. I prefer to use Reason, which is the one I'm using right now, because of reasons of portability. So when I will bring my files to another recording studio or to somebody else's house to do some recording or to do some writing, if you use certain DAWs, they might not all have the same access. But with Reason, everything is packaged into one file so that you know that when you go from one studio to the next studio that all of your files and instruments will all be there exactly the way that you recorded them.
It's also important to remember when talking about DAWs that you're talking about digital, and that makes an impact in another way, which is in terms of security and safety of storage. So, when the Beatles were recording in Abbey Road, they of course could take those recordings, those analog recordings, and put them in a vault and safely store them for all time, so there really wasn't much degradation. But for artists that don't have the money and the resources of the Beatles, when they were trying to store their recordings, over time they would degrade or get lost or recorded over accidentally. There were all kinds of potential problems. But with a DAW system, with digital music, you can now record, save it to the cloud, and be fairly assured that you're always going to have that recording exactly how you made it.
So just to review, what was the impact of DAWs? Well, there was a democratization of music production, because costs were lower. There's recording at a higher bit rate. It's now easier to transfer music from one studio to another studio. There's a wider range of instruments and effects that are easily available, and reliable long-term storage. Thanks for watching.